Welcome to the In-Depth Genealogist Chit Chat Live for the week of 19 March 2017. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Valerie Eichler Lair, and today we're going to chat about long lost family, who do you think you are, and relative race. And joining me this week are Terry O'Connell. She is the executive director for IDG. Hi, Terry.
Hey Val, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good, good. Ready to chat?
Absolutely, had some great episodes this week.
Definitely, definitely. And we also have Cheryl Hudson Passy. She's the Carolina Girl genealogy blogger, and she's also a writer for Going In Depth, the digital magazine. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm ready to go and talk about all this genealogy TV.
Good, good. And new joining us today is Dustin Austin. He's the president of the Seneca County chapter of the Ohio Genealogical Society. He blogs once in a while. He's a speaker, and he's doing quite a bit of DNA recently. In fact, he leads a local DNA study group. So we're going to use and abuse him for our DNA part. So hi, Dustin. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Thanks, everyone, and welcome to the show. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get chatting. The first one up is Long Lost Family, and this was set in my home state of Iowa, so it really hit close to home for me. In fact, I grew up about 157 miles from Davenport. So, Terry, would you like to start us off with how Long Lost Family episode was?
You know, I really liked this week that they focused on just one story. Instead of having two different families and you're flashing back and forth, it really was great to see the whole thing go through, looking for one half of the family and then coming back, starting over and looking for the second half. And I liked that they really showed that Mark had a ton of great information, and I think if he was a researcher, he probably could have done this on his own, at least getting to the mother's obituary. And I will add that Mark's song, oh my God, it was beautiful, it was sad, and it was just a very, very touching episode. And I know we get hung up a lot here on the emotions of these stories, but they get you.
It really does. It really does. In fact, I was messaging you during the show, during the commercials, and saying, I can't even see the TV. I'm crying so hard.
Right.
I liked what you said about, you had made a comment to me before the show about his adoptive mom writing things down.
That she gave so much information to the daughter, made the daughter promise she would find him, and that she took her old yearbook and had the father's name underlined so that there was no doubt, like, this is the man, this is him, you know, please finish our story off and unravel it all. It was hard. It was a lot.
Can you believe that note, that handwritten note on just a little scrap of paper that gave
everything?
You know, the court, the date. It's like, how many times do we wish we had that?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, seeing the dad's name underlined, and of course, no, I didn't go down that rabbit hole looking at the Iowa stuff yet. But
right.
Right. Yeah. So, what other parts of that show, since it was just one part or one person, that struck you? I'm mainly referring to how the one of the hosts, Chris Jacobs, refers some of the research to his colleague.
Oh, it was nice to see him pull
some help in.
Lisa, I couldn't even think of her name. Lisa Joyner. To pull her into the story, since it was only the one story this week. To see him pull her and say, hey, I'm on the road. Can you start following up and see what you can find here? you know, and it's obvious. We know that Lisa and Chris aren't doing probably all this research. Somebody else is probably behind the scenes. This is my guess. I have no clue. Somebody else is behind the scenes doing it, and they're coming back with what's prepared. I mean, how could Lisa and Chris do this for every episode? It's just too much. And especially if you think they've probably got a lot of cases that they're working on that are becoming stories, you know, week after week, you know, year after year. So.
But I like how he actually called. Of course, I don't think it was a good idea while he was driving. But
it's Bluetooth, Val. Come on.
I know Bluetooth. I saw that. But how he called in a colleague, how we all should do that, or try and do that, or how much fun it is when we do something like that. So
absolutely.
Right. We all don't have not even qualifications, but the expertise in every area. You know, sometimes you have to send it on to somebody else. You know what, this isn't my area. I just really, you're best to talk to this person.
Right. Or a fresh set of eyes for that matter.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I've called in a colleague subcontractor, call in a colleague in for client work that was in New Jersey, and part of it was in New York. So I got boots on the ground, you know, so to speak. So, and it's good to do that, even with our own research.
Absolutely.
But yeah, great. Thank you. Dustin, you wanted to bring up about a couple sides of the Mark story.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting, the fact that the father, usually you don't see them get as emotional or feel it maybe as guilty as what we've seen in the episode. And I found that kind of interesting because, you know, it's great when you see the emotion because you actually know how you can almost relate to the people and say, wow, you know, this had a profound impact on their life. You know, it's something he obviously was deeply regretted throughout his entire life. And he kind of made it sound, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but he kind of made it sound like I don't know that he couldn't move on with his life, but it's like he always felt he was weighed down by this, so to speak.
Yes, I was touched by him almost asking for, well, he asked for forgiveness. And he was told there's nothing to forgive. And I think that's an important thing for any biological parents that may be watching the show to realize that they've done the best thing they could for their child by providing them a family that they can be raised in. And so I was really touched with him being told, you don't have anything to apologize. You know, I was raised in a good family. I'm bonded to them and I love them. And, you know, you're just now part of a more extended family, but there's nothing to apologize for. I was really touched by that.
Yeah. Well, I will say for the people who liked Mark singing at the end, because he did have a really beautiful voice, and he does have a website. It is markmoss.net, and that also links to his YouTube. But I don't see that song on there that he sang on the show. So maybe he'll get some requests.
Maybe he had to wait till the show aired.
Yeah, but maybe get it up there in the future. So markmoss.net.
Mark what?
Moss, M-O-S-S.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good. Oh, guess what I'm going to do later? Good.
As you guys sat here and talked, I was on my phone like.
Yeah. But Dustin, too, from your perspective, you know, with the father side, you know, sons always, you know, try to relate to the male in the line. You know, they take after them and so forth. So, you know, seeing his father and how the two reacted, you know, how did that give you some kind of impact?
I found it very interesting, you know, the simple fact that a lot of guys are afraid to show their emotion. And I think it was all about him just laying it all on the line and just saying, like, I don't care what other people think. You know, I want everyone to know how deep I regret this. And it was just very, very sincere and very, you know, just like, wow, one of those wow moments. Like, this is not your typical adoption connection. Like, he has some deep rooted, you know, issues with, not issues, but You know where I'm coming from.
Yes.
Deep-seated guilt.
Yes.
It was like he was guilt-ridden, even though, he did what he could do. He even he said, whatever I made, I gave to, your mom,
paid for her to
room and board. And it's like, oh my gosh, it just,
and if you noticed when Mark talked about that his mom that Barb was deceased, it was like you could tell like that really impacted him too. Like, wow, she's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, to think about it, and after after Mark was born, and then he sees her in that classroom, and then never sees her again.
Right.
Like, he sees her for what? He didn't even say how long, if it was for a minute, to see her and like, oh, the baby's gone, and here you are, and now what?
Right.
I as that part happened, I was like, oh, why didn't he stop and talk? But I thought, you know what? That probably would have been so hard.
Really? Yes.
Because, I mean, just by watching this, you could tell, one, that he loved her.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That they were young and they couldn't do it. And
exactly.
The best thing for them.
And what about the fact, too, that music was such a part of their lives and such a part of his life. And we've seen so many situations like that where people go back into their ancestry and find, whether it's an adoption story or not, just tracing their ancestors, they find that they're so much like their ancestors. So I think, would he have been, a musician either way? Yes, apparently so. It was
like you said, it's in my
gene. Him. Yeah,
right.
It's in his genes. Of course, we don't know what kind of family situation he had. They may have been musical as well, his adopted family. So, either way, I think it was wonderful, that connection.
To your point, Sherry, I have to tell you this. My first job, I was about 19. I worked for a paper company. They made boxes. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandfather all at one time worked for paper companies.
Oh, wow. Oh, I love that.
It still gives me goosebumps, and I've heard it before.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It really hits home.
It does.
It hit home to me because it was Iowa, because I was born and raised there. My mom, it was just me and her. My dad left, and she remarried when I was 1 year and 3 months old, so I didn't know my dad. And when I did finally meet him, he thought I was his granddaughter, so I was never even introduced to him as, this is your youngest daughter. You left when I was a baby. And so seeing this just brought up all kinds of emotions, and being in Iowa and seeing all the places. And then when he said, let's start with a good old-fashioned Iowa hug, and I'm going, yes. I even posted that on Facebook, yes, Iowa, hashtag Iowa pride. But even down to, oh my gosh, when they were going to go and meet the father, and down the road, and you see the tar patched, that's what I grew up around and still see to this day. And so, yeah, that was really touching, and it was hard. And you have to realize that, like they even said, this makes it real. It's not just a name.
Right.
It's not just a date. These are real people.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's go on.
Let's go on before Val starts crying. Gets us all crying.
Yeah. Dustin, we didn't tell you that tissues were required not only to watch the show, but then also to do the IDG Chit Chat Live.
Understandably so.
But next up is Who Do You Think You Are? And it was with Jennifer Gray. And it was a very, very interesting story, and how they got started, and where they got started, and having done some research in Brooklyn and so forth. Again, this one was hit close to for me. But I know, Terry, you mentioned something really cool about Jennifer being smart.
Well,
so
let's start.
Take it away.
Last year, I think it was last year, we had somebody on Who Do You Think You Are that a lot of us were fangirling over, and we were like, oh, It just was not a good episode. We kind of laughed about it behind closed doors. And I was very excited to see Jennifer come on, and she like just floored me with how smart. I mean, yes, she's a smart woman. Okay, we're a lot of smart women, but she was really, I mean, there were words coming out of her mouth. I was like, I need a dictionary to follow her. So, and it was like question after question, and with each answer, she had a new question that she wanted to follow to make sure she understood. Exactly. But what I liked most is that though she didn't know the grandmother's name or the great-grandmother's name, and she was very sad about that, her story, even though I like it to focus on a couple of people so we get more of a family tree, her whole reason behind following her grandfather was because he always looked like a kind of a cantankerous old man. She just wanted to know why. And I think they did a great job of showing her this is why he is who he was. Exactly. So all around, I mean, it was a great episode, and I love that she wanted to make sure that her daughter, not only got the information, but was very adamant with her. I want to make sure you tell your children. Yes. Because that used to be one of the parts I loved about the show, is they always went back and talked to somebody. And told them about their experiences. And they've cut that out. We haven't seen that in a long time. Or unless somebody joins them, you know. But to have her there at the beginning and at the end and just really get the insight of it, it makes
that's a good point. I noticed that the last several seasons, they start with, a parent or a family member and then end with that same person, bringing it back. And when she started with her daughter, she goes, oh, I don't want to read this by myself. Plus, I want you to be involved. And, and even at the very end, when her daughter says, well, this stuff is really important. And it's like, good for her. You got to bring in that next generation.
Well, she was processing it with her daughter. It wasn't just, let me tell you what I learned. It was a discussion going on and feelings. And this is why I feel, yes, I understand why you feel this way. So she was part of that, processing the information. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah. And the other thing I liked is that she's so connected with her roots in her town that she wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't getting into the big black SUV.
Yeah, that's true.
Subway everywhere.
Yes.
Come on, can you imagine being on the subway and be like, oh, like there's Jennifer Grey?
I wonder, though, if the places that she was walking, especially when I watched it the second time, it repeated later on the same night, where she's walking by the buildings and having downloaded some of the pictures of a client's where his ancestors had lived. I wonder if that's where her grandfather lived.
I was kind of wondering that.
I wondered that too.
Where they were living. Yeah, I was thinking the same. She was stopped and looking and.
And especially that one. Sorry. I'm sorry. Especially that one where it was a rather long shot for TV. 30 seconds is long.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say, just another example of what more do they have that we didn't see? Give us some follow-up. We want to know.
Well, there was hidden messages, as far as asking research questions and being, specific. And then the other hidden one was, going to these addresses where your ancestors lived. I do that all the time, or identify photographs, by those addresses. So these are hidden hints, besides, starting with either the census record or a passenger list, and getting down to, the World War I draft registration card and so forth. But the other hidden hints of the research questions. And I know, Sherry, you wanted to emphasize or talk about that. So go for it.
Exactly. I mean, it was an example. She had a question. She asked the question. They found the documents to answer the question. You can't always find the document to answer the question. She was lucky that she was able to. And then she looked at the information, processed the information, and said, okay, this is what this document is telling me. Now, what questions do I have from this document, and where do I go next? And hey, that's our process, isn't it? That's how we research, and that's how they presented this process with her. And I was amazed at how she was getting it. She was looking at, okay, what does this say? No, what are the, what are the headings and the columns? What is this information telling me? And then processing, okay, this is what it says. So what does this mean and where do we need to look next? I loved it. I loved that, showing that process.
And also, then when she said, I want to hold the document.
Yes,
yes.
Can you print it? And I'm going, yes, it's not all about digital.
Yeah, she's getting it. And she wasn't, like I said before, she wasn't just sitting there letting them tell her the story. She was thinking it through, and what does this mean? And tell me the story. She wanted to figure it out for herself. She was coming up with the questions herself, and I really, really liked that.
The other thing I wanted to add too, and it'll bring me back to Val, is that she was so in touch with this story, and when they got her great grandmother's name, and she, unfortunately, they had to go to commercial right away, and it kept going. And her name is, and her name is. Yes. And she came back, and she's just crying, and she's like, I didn't know it meant that much. But nobody's known her name, and now we have this.
Right.
Heart-wrenching. I just thought of our dear friend Val. Val, did you cry at that?
Yeah, because my mom didn't know her birth mom's name.
Right.
Even though she really did, and I've had that name, all these years, it again, not knowing, and how all three of these shows this week has hit that point where she worked so hard to try and find out. And who was it, and why? And now I'm going through all the emotions, even as much as being mad. It's like, why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you look at that? And why didn't this person come back? And then when she found out, Shendel, and and that she had died in childbirth, and I'm thinking, well, thank goodness that didn't happen to my mom's mom. But it just, oh yeah, I was a basket case.
I'm sure. And to bring it full circle, when she started talking at the end about, okay, now I understand his story. He wasn't just this grouchy man. I can connect, and I can empathize, and I understand. It reminded me of my mom's grandmother. She always used to tell me what a grouchy woman she was. She was just grouchy all the time. Until I really started doing some research and was able to show my mom, out of her 12 children, she lost half of them before she died. Just all these different stories of things that had happened to her in her life. And so we were able to have a conversation and say, well, no wonder she was the way she was. Life experiences can do things to you. And I'm pretty sure that's probably why she saw her grandmother the way she did, is she didn't know. I mean, she knew that her own father had died, but she didn't know that so many had died, and that she'd had to bury, 6 children. So I think sometimes we get an impression from a picture or from knowing somebody when we were young, and then when we go to research and really learn about their lives, our eyes can be open to why they were the way they were. And it's healing. I think it's healing too.
Definitely. When I first saw part of it, I'm thinking back, not only taking notes, because I take a whole lot of notes, but my mom's situation and my grandmother's, and you look at the photos and it's like, why are they so mad looking? And she kept saying that and emphasizing that, well, you saw the story, and then how it's Jews not being hired, and the Jewish, anti-Semitism, and, just the whole thing. So, Dustin, you're up. And this is the first time you've really been exposed to how we chat and so forth, and what we bring up, especially during the Who Do You Think You Are segment of our chat. Give us an insight on what your favorite parts were, records, or something.
On Who Do You Think You Are? Well, I didn't get to watch it last Sunday evening because I had that fun news that came up.
That's right.
Oh, that's right. Well, then share that with us. Why that was more important than watching Who Do You Think You Are?
I have
See how I lead into that?
That's perfectly fine. I actually had some very exciting news Sunday night. About 5 o'clock, I go in and I check both mine and my dad's DNA test results, like I do once a day. And a new cousin match popped up at a first cousin match level. And I'm like, this is unreal. I'm like, I know every one of my dad's first cousins. I'm like, and this is none of them.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, something doesn't seem right here. So I, of course, naturally, me not even thinking, I'm so excited about this. You know, it's like finding a new find in the library, like Catherine Wilson's response during Roots Tech.
Yes, I witnessed that. I was the photographer.
Yes, the happy. I love the happy dance. So I'm doing this happy dance, and here all of a sudden I fire a message away, not even thinking about it, and I'm like, "Who are your grandparents?" And then I look further, and under both of his parents, he has question marks. And so I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I remember something about my aunt.
Oh, wow.
And so long story short, I guess I had forgotten somehow that for a short time period, I guess I should say, I forgot that my aunt had a baby that she gave up for adoption because she couldn't take care of him. And now so I fired a message back to him, and he's probably thinking, who is this creep? So he messages, and this gets actually pretty funny. So he messages me back, and it was absolutely great. And he says, well, something about what do you know? And I said, were you born in ... on such and such a date? And he's like, oh my gosh, call me.
Wow.
So I sent him my phone number, and he called me just as Who Do You Think You Are was starting. So
good. Your excuse.
Kind of like the phone calls that Lisa Joyner and Chris Jacobs in Long Lost Family make.
Yeah.
You know, are you, did you, you know, have you, you know, at least you didn't hear her say, we found him. I found him.
Well, I have to say, the family that I've told, I have one aunt living, and unfortunately his mother's now deceased. And, but there's one, we both have one aunt that's living, the youngest of the kids, and everyone is just absolutely ecstatic to finally find him. And there's much more to it, but I don't want to say it on air. And it's just, it's absolutely wonderful. And everyone is so excited, and everyone is just very, very happy about this. So it's been a great couple days.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's awesome. We actually know someone that's, you know, having the moment.
For the last 2 days, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we can do a chit chat live on just that maybe sometime.
There you go.
After you feel comfortable and
that's right.
You know, kind of have our own
long lost family.
I got a message this weekend from a woman who, her and her daughter both match me. It's distant. It's like, I think 3rd or 4th cousins, she wrote, is what Ancestry Date is predicting. And she's adopted. And with where she's at, I've pretty much, you know, it's got to be my Irish line.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know. I'm going to have to sit and try to figure it out.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for sharing such touching moments of Who Do You Think You Are. If you have New York research, or if you've got Jewish research, even if you don't, because you can pick up so many methodology tips, but if you have New York and that kind of research, you've got to watch that episode. And the next Who Do You Think You Are is going to have Noah Wiley, and we might have to do just an entire chit chat on him because I watched him religiously.
Now, before we move on, really quick, a couple things. On our YouTube channel is a video on Jewish genealogy that Jen Alfred did while she was at Roots Tech. So that might be helpful to anyone researching their Jewish roots. And also, in this episode, they reference the Pale settlement in Russia. And I know that it's been discussed on finding your roots in the past. So we did a little digging before the show, and it was March of last year, so March of 2016. We believe it was like either the Dustin Hoffman or Juliana Margulies episode. So if you go into archives for Chit Chat Live for March of last year, there's only 4 episodes. Kind of give them a watch if you need more information on that as well.
Right, great. And then I also did some digging too before the show. Is Jen published an in brief on researching your Jewish ancestry or ancestors.
That was by Shannon.
And then Shannon Combs Bennett, she did an in brief publication of Beginner's Guide to Genetics.
Yeah, I just mixed those up. Sorry.
Yeah, those. Yeah, I have it here on my notes. And then also, I loved the Going In Depth magazine November 2016 issue. I'm not a genealogist. Lessons learned from DNA testing that Heather Reed with IDG has done. So there you've got 4 or 5 things that can point you for assistance and help. So great.
And those in brief guides can be purchased at theinDepthGenealogist.com/shop. But make it free to find them.
There's one that I want to point out too, because at the end of Relative Race, which we're going to talk about next, one of the authors did a genealogist guide to Boston, Massachusetts, so you might be interested in that. And I just purchased the one. I'm getting ready. I know it's not going to be until the end of September, but I got to start getting ready to go to Washington, D.C. So I bought the PDF version of Genealogist Guide to Researching in Washington, D.C. that Shannon did, and you can order it as well. Cool. Well, that leads into relative race. So who would like to go first in talking about that besides Sherry? No, Sherry's more than welcome to go first.
Hashtag obsessed.
Yeah. So take it away, Sherry.
All right. What a great episode. Oh my gosh, so much emotion, so much angst, so much frustration of not getting to where they needed to go. And then, of course, you know, we had Team Black and Polly's Island, which is just 15 minutes from my house. So I may need to go stalk the relative that they met. And then we had Team Blue in Charleston, which is only 2 hours from me. And I've been down to the Battery where they were doing their exercise challenge several times. We had Team Red going to Alabama, and we had Team Green going to St. Augustine. So they stayed right in Florida. So yeah, it was an amazing episode. It was emotional. Team Black was able to meet one of Maddie's relatives this time, which was great for her. Sweet lady. They were able to connect with ancestors back to the Mayflower. They were able to go back and look, yes, this one married this one's, you know, descendants, and that's cool. And that's how we are related, which I thought was great, because sometimes they just say, well, there's somewhere we're cousins and we think we come from this line, but they were able to figure it out. I thought that was wonderful. Team Blues was very, very difficult because Kayla was, she has a really hard story about her father abandoning the family. And so when she found out it was her relative, she was afraid of what she was going to find out, and it turned out to be a first cousin, and on her father's side, and it just sent her out the door. She had to cry it out for a little bit, and you know, you can kind of understand that emotion. It brought back a lot of stuff that she hadn't been able to process. Go ahead, Dustin.
And I think part of that though was the fact that not only was she a first cousin, but she knew her, and
yes.
Kayla didn't know her. Right. And it was like, what do you know about me?
Yeah. Yeah. And why haven't I even met you before? And why are you telling me you know my sisters and you met me when I was a kid? And yet all I remember when I was a kid is nobody from that side of the family helping us when we needed help. And so all that turmoil, all that emotion just kind of burst out of her, and she just had to go and sit for a while. And so I I can understand that. I can understand that.
I actually felt bad that they followed her with the camera, and like
she needed some alone time.
Right.
Totally needed to like process and move through it.
Right. And they may have cut it just, she may have had some, and she may have said, yes, you can show that part. Maybe they asked her. There is a YouTube video, a vlog that they did where they discuss it. And that's what she's talking about, is she just had to process through that emotion. And then once she did that, then they were okay. She was happy to have met her cousin.
It was good that they made a good connection after that.
Yeah, and they talked about going back to see them and visit them. So,
and that's what was good, that they showed that part.
Right.
You have to show, just the good stuff. You have to show everything. And that's the part where I had to stop watching the recording and go process it outside as well, and cry my eyes out. I felt so bad for her. And again, putting your own self into that situation.
Right. Well, we need to understand when we are researching, whether it's DNA connections, family tree connections, looking for family members if we've been adopted, we've got to prepare ourselves for what we could find. And it's not going to all be fun and roses and, oh, I'm so excited we connect on the Mayflower line. It's not going to be that way, and it's going to be hard sometimes, really, really hard. And so before you begin these journeys, you need to understand that and be prepared as you can be for what you may find.
And I kind of cut out there for a second, but, kind of building off of what you said, as far as the emotion, even though she was upset, I think once she found out some of the good sides of her family, like that really helped pull it all together and say, wow, my family's not as bad as what maybe she was leading to believe, or, it helped say, okay, there's some really good points I need to learn about. It's not all bad.
Right.
Exactly.
And blame them for what he did.
Exactly. Yes. And she discovered that she had a ancestor who was born in slavery, but was able to, he was freed, and he was able to buy land, and he was prosperous. And, that was a turning point where she realized, oh my goodness, there are good things. As we were saying, there are good things about this family, and she was grateful that she was learning those good things. So I think all in all, it was very, it was good for her. It was a good process for her to go through. I think it was a good thing for her to be able to do that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sherry.
I also, Jennifer, really quick. This is all I won't add a lot because I know we're really over on time.
Right.
In regards to Team Black, Team Blue, we started knowing Team Black's story. We were very upfront with it from the beginning.
Right.
He didn't know his family, basically either side at this point. And Kayla, that was her name, right?
Yeah.
With Kayla, we didn't really get that backstory.
Right.
So there was no like emotional tie to her and her. We just they seemed kind of almost gruff,
Right.
There was just nothing there that said, "Hey, vote for me."
Right. And she is missing her children too. That's another thing for her.
Things this week really opened up to her. So now you're like, okay, you can root for them. You can root for them.
Yeah.
Oh, and my heart felt for the red team because they, the car wreck, and then they couldn't get their drone, and they sat there and took the penalty, and just one thing after another. So my heart felt for them, and the green team was just coming apart at the seams with frustration and emotions.
I can so relate to her, though.
I felt bad for her, and it just makes me wonder, is she going to look back? But she says, I've learned a lot. She said, looking back at my emotions today, I need to grow up a little bit and and do better tomorrow.
But when she was crying, I hate to get lost.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen me following a paper map, because I don't do the GPS thing, and I can't find something, I've literally sat there on the side of the freeway or on the side of the road out in the ditch, crying my eyes out. Where am I going? Why did I even get here?
Right.
So her meltdown I could relate to, and it's like, forget, if I'd be losing it anyway, because the first time you told me that I had to fillet a fish.
That was
Gotta
great.
make me into it.
Maddie did a great job. He did a great job. But it's real now. The strikes, it's real. And so that frustration is in there. There is that time limit. Somebody's gonna get a strike. Somebody is gonna go home. So, it makes it more real. So the frustration, I think every week is really gonna build. So, and hey, what was up? What's up at the end? Black team wins. They choose the group, the game, and it's fuzzy dice. What the
Fuzzy
heck?
dice, like really?
Fuzzy
Yeah,
dice.
coming out of that next
Game
week.
benefit?
What is that?
I think something's gonna happen with that.
Bling from the car for the card to look good? I don't know. It better be something worth their while.
Maybe
But
you can roll the dice for time off.
Maybe.
I think there's gonna be something to it next week.
Maybe, but it
yeah.
didn't help. It didn't help the blue team because they chose the game benefit last
And it
week,
didn't
and it was
help them
5
at all.
minutes on the internet. It didn't help them at all. I've been to North Charleston. I understand completely.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. Well, because I could be all mom, but the dice, when I saw them, I'm going, oh my gosh, that was back in high school days when we would hang fuzzy dice from the rearview mirror.
Well, maybe it's going to get them into something quicker. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Who knows? But red team got the strike, so they have 2 strikes now. So,
And here's something with that strike. People, okay, it's a game. We know it's a game. It's a race.
Right.
You got to do everything quickly. But here's
Right.
what we learned with this episode. They chose to set out because they got frustrated quickly with the drone. It was
Yes.
45 minutes.
Right.
If they would have gotten it, they could have, literally second or third place is where they would have been.
Right.
There was a minute
Right.
difference. If you took that 45 minutes out, it was a
Right.
minute difference between them.
Yeah.
So
Ugh.
it just shows you when you play these types of games that it's
Yes.
important to
Every minute
how
counts.
frustrated you are, take a step
Right.
back and just keep going.
Right.
And
seriously,
I have a
blue-
question for Dustin.
Oh, go ahead.
Dustin, how would you have done guiding that drone and doing the fitness training part? I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, first of all, fitness is not, if you've seen me, is not in my forte. So me running, it's not a pretty sight. But on a second note, as far as the drone goes, I have to say I got my my dad a drone for Christmas, and I've been kind of playing with it in secret. So I'm just starting to get the hang of it. So
was it hard to learn?
it's not as easy as you think.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because I guess it depends on first of all, it depends on what kind of drone you have, and then it depends on how anxious you are, because when you
Right.
pay how much money for a drone, you don't want to wreck it. So
True.
you're like,
Right.
now with them, they probably didn't care about wrecking it. They're just like, get it through I think it's the adrenaline rush. Like you're just trying to get the challenge done. So when you rush through something, you can't always really stop and think, okay, stop, take your time and do it.
Exactly.
And just think through this. And then you
Right.
probably would be more successful rather than, oh my gosh, I got to get through this right now so we can move on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very true.
so, and kind of going back to, like the prizes, I don't know what you guys think, but last season, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, they said each team would get like $30 a day allowance for gas and food or something. I thought they said something about they got an allowance each week.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't think they
Yeah.
said anything
And they
this
haven't
time.
said. They haven't, as far as I know.
And I haven't heard them say anything this season. And so it's like, so what exactly benefit would the money have with them?
I guess
I
just
don't
to
know.
have. It probably doesn't help with the race. It's just a personal perk.
Personal.
You know, they can come home with that money.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the blue team would need to get selfie lessons with their money.
They did better on their selfie.
They're getting a little better, but they crack me up with those selfies.
I'm gonna blame it-
challenged.
I'm going to blame it on the cell phone.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. So
Oh my gosh, you guys. We
can't wait for day 4.
we've come to our chat limit or
Yes.
time limit. Oh my gosh. We're going to have to extend it. No. But definitely this year's season for Relative Race by far
Mhm.
exceeds last season.
It does.
They really kicked it up a notch, a couple notches, and even bringing in the genealogy part and showing this episode too explained the ancestry DNA circles.
Right.
And so and the tree and showing where, and this person, and even Kayla on the blue team to her third great grandfather that she had no idea about. So explaining that really has put the genealogy side of it even to me more credible.
And they're doing more with the families too.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
And explaining
kidnapping them and
the pirate
boat.
My mouth watered seeing that. Well, I had with crawfish, but when they had the shrimp, the boil,
the low country boil.
The low country boil. Ooh,
oh my God!
I know how those are.
They taste so good.
Oh. Sorry, I think we're all coming to your house for a low country boil.
Let's do. Hey, I'm gonna go. I told you I'm stalking the relative, and we can all come do chit chat from her house.
There you go. There you go. Well, we need to come to an end. We'll be back again next week to go in depth about these genealogy TV shows. So I thank Terry and Sherry and Dustin for joining me and having a great discussion, a great chat on these shows. We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line in the comments below. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the IDG's YouTube channel, or send us a simple email at info@indepthgenealogist.com. So we'll see you all next time and go in depth with all your ancestors. Bye-bye.